here's some cherry that I picked up actually yesterday. So this board chimes in at, I believe it was 10 feet. So that's a little long to be dealing with on a jointer anyway. But one of the great advantages of using this is that I can take a guide rail and I can place it on here to make my straight cut. So in one cut, I'm going to have a straight edge on the end. Now, of course, if you had a jointer, you could go for a nice cleanup pass, a really light cleanup pass, just to get rid of any machine marks. Or in my case, I take out a hand plane and take care of that after I've cut it a little bit further. Now let me get a guide rail on here and I'll explain it. So this is my common setup for doing edge jointing. I'll simply place the guide rail on here on where I want to cut it. Now here I'm taking off more than I normally would do, simply because I wanted you to be able to see it clearly on the video. But typically I'll just take off a hair on the edge, run the whole cut through, and then I have a nice straight edge. A board this long is going to be difficult to do even on any size jointer, a 10-foot board. I mean, you're going to get a little bit you can get a little bit of bowing in there depending on how the board is, the edge is clear, and so on. But this is so much simpler and faster. The other thing I like about it, and it may not be immediately apparent, now on this board here, the grain is actually pretty decent on this one here. I wouldn't really have any reasons to want to change it. One of the boards I had recently on a project that I had, though, if you can imagine, it was mostly quarter sawn. It was actually the riff sawn portion, but the grain was running skew. I mean, I'm exaggerating here, but it was running slightly askew, and I really wanted it to be straight for the cut. So what the advantage of using this guide rail system is that, again, exaggerating for the sake of making it more visible on here, is I could place this so that I was cutting parallel to those skew grain lines, and I could run that rip, and afterwards I've got a nice cleaned up board exactly the way I want it. And that would be a very difficult thing to do on, say, a jointer or a table saw without building some jig, whereas basically this is your jig. Now this is the 3000 guide rail. The one that comes with the 75 nowadays is the 1900 guide rail, if I remember correctly. With that, you'll be able to cross-cut a sheet of ply with your 75 because you need a little bit of starting space and ending space for finishing your cut. But in contrast, the 55 saw comes with the 1400 guide rails. So I believe that's everything I wanted to cover on this saw. Oh, actually, I take that back. I will add one more item. Let me get a shorter guide rail to show you this. So when you're plunging the saw, one thing that can happen is if you're plunging the saw, say in the middle of the stock, or at least starting in on the stock, is that once it goes to engage and the blade drops down further, you're going to get a little bit of a kickback. That's just natural. So one of the things that's nice is on board they have a little stow here for a small attachment. That what this does is you slide it onto the end of your guide rail, and then you lock it into place. So you would place your saw, say here is where you're wanting to start your plunge. You're going to want to place this and screw it down. Now at least when it goes to kick, this can't go back. It's supporting you there. So this is a really nice feature. I typically actually keep these on my guide rails as opposed to keeping it on the saw. That way there I always have it available. Well, it's always available on the saw too. So, the one other thing I'd like to point out is that there are a number of different blades for this saw. This is the universal combination blade that comes with it. And there is a rip blade called the Panther blade, and as well as some specialty ones for aluminum and for solid surface. Now, in the past, the kerf size on each of those was slightly different. So what you run into as a problem is that there's a little tiny strip here on the side of the rail that you can probably see. You cut this with your saw. This is the splinter guard that I'm talking about, and it also is basically a zero clearance edge. That's why you can place this exactly on what you want to cut off, and you know that that's what you're going to get removed. Now the problem with the kerfs being different is that the widest blade is going to cut this back, and then when you switch to a different blade that's more narrow, this is no longer accurate, and you're not getting the full splinter guard support. Since that time, Festool's announced new blades that are available now, and all of them have the exact same kerf. So you can switch between the Panther blade, the combination blade, the solid surface blade, all of those. They'll have the same size kerf, so this splinter guard won't change. So that seems to be a very important thing, and that's actually the ones that I'm going to be purchasing now. I think that's about all I would want to say about the saw. I personally love this saw. Every time I use it, my neighbor comes over and he says, "That's your favorite tool, right?" There's actually several favorites in here, but this is among those. Definitely it'll serve you well. Get yourself an MFT to go along with it, and you'll be very happy.